Are tuned in too.
You're listening to Business Talk Radio, where we take business to the next level.
Today's show is sponsored by Dr. Jacalyn. Take charge of your life personally, financially, and professionally. Visit drjacalyn.com to book an appointment today.
Hello and welcome to Rapping with Dr. Jacalyn, the business show here on Business Talk Radio and simultaneously live streaming on Facebook and YouTube. Welcome to our very first program. This is a program all about business, and I'm going to be joined today by my co-host, Al Cini. Al, welcome to the program.
Dr. Jacalyn, thank you so much for inviting me and it's great to be here.
So, Al, tell our viewers what our program is about.
Well, today's program in particular will be about a great interview in the second half hour with Matthew Warzel. And Matt is going to talk to us about his executive coaching, and he's going to talk about resume writing, which is something else he does. And so it's a very relevant program for an awful lot of people, I think, that are mid-career or changing careers these days, and really looking forward to that conversation. But I want to start by asking you some questions. And Dr. Jacalyn, what is the dumbest mistake you ever made writing a resume for a job application?
I once wrote a resume that was about 5 pages long. So
what did you cover in that? You just went on and on.
Anything that I possibly got a gold star for in my life, I put on there. So, it is ridiculous as just small accomplishments that meant a lot to me, but were completely irrelevant in terms.
You remember back in the old days, people used to list their hobbies on their resumes?
Absolutely. Yes.
Yeah,
and times have certainly changed.
You'd put what you did in your spare time on your resume. And I mean, it's totally a no-no these days, but it was a very, very common thing.
That's true. That's true. How about you?
Well, the dumbest resume mistake I ever made. Because I was a technology guy, and that was kind of my background. And when I was a kid, I thought tech was kind of very precise and very scientific. I once wrote a resume in the form of kind of like an Excel spreadsheet that had my experience listed as rows and my number of years listed as columns, and I got the job, but I had to overcome the resume. Let's just say that more of the conversation in the interview was about the resume and what was I thinking than
right.
having, and it was a bad idea looking back on it.
But that just goes to show that you had an obstacle that was in your way, which unfortunately you're the one who created
It was a self-inflicted shooting yourself in the foot obstacle, Dr. Jacalyn. You know, I think when it comes to applying for jobs and trying to get hired by companies, the biggest obstacle we have to overcome is sometimes ourselves and our own mistaken attitudes about that. And I know you're in the coaching business and you help people kind of see around the corners and view themselves as others view them so that they do
Absolutely.
a better job. How would you coach a kid like me who believes that he needs to put everything on his resume and that the whole world needs to know everything about me? What do you tell me?
Well, the first thing I tell them, and I think it'll be interesting when Matt comes on as he's the expert in this area, but I tell them to look at whatever the job listing is, or if they've been approached by a recruiter, and to find those key words that the employer is looking for to hire someone with these particular skills and talents, and then have your resume in alignment with that. So, of course, if you don't have these skill sets or if you don't have what they're looking for, I think you don't have to have every one of them. But you should have, I know at least on LinkedIn, they will rank the skill sets that people have versus what the company's looking for. So if you have 4 out of 10, you know, you're not going to be as well perceived as someone who has 6 or 7 out of 10.
6 or 7. You know, yeah, I'm really glad you brought that up because a lot of people think that they're applying for the job and that the person who's going to review their resume first is the person who's actually hiring for the position.
Good point.
That really is a misconception. These days, the hiring process has been taken over by a bureaucracy inside of companies that handles the first pass at resumes. They usually get a mountain of them and they kind of have to quickly pick through them to try to find the most promising candidates. And if you don't check off, if you don't tick the boxes that need to be ticked to fill that position, you're never going to get a chance to interview because your resume will just end up in a pile on the side and that'll be that. And so it's really great advice to tell people that they need to think about the job they're applying for and not just themselves.
Absolutely.
I was in the recruiting business for a long time. I once got a resume from a gentleman who included on his resume a list of all the Friendly's restaurants he'd eaten at all over the world. And he said his hobby was eating at Friendly's. This is going back a ways. I'm not even sure if there are Friendly's anymore, but he actually listed Friendly's all over the world that he'd visited and what he had. And this was like an attachment to his resume.
What he had to eat at the Friendly's?
What he ate. He actually remembered what he ate. He wrote all that down and documented all that carefully. And we were hiring him for a software developer position. So taste tester at Friendly's was not the job.
That is very interesting.
It's interesting.
So what about after somebody writes the resume and they get the interview? And you and I have talked about this before. People have said to me as a coach, you know, should they put on some persona when they go in for the interview? Should they act in a different manner than just being themselves? So what are your thoughts about that, Al?
There's that whole authenticity thing. You know, I've actually seen that blown a couple of different ways. I was in the recruiting business for a long time. That's where that resume experience came from. And by the way, we gave the applicant from the Friendly's restaurants the interview, mostly because we all wanted to meet the guy. So we just said, why don't you come in and we'll talk? It turned out he was completely unqualified for the job, but kind of a funny guy to talk to. Authenticity, I think you need to be you, and I think that's really a critical. You can't go in pretending to be somebody else and then expect them to accept that when you show up on your first day of work, you're now you and not that person they interviewed. So you really do want to set expectations intelligently and carefully. Now, the way I've seen that blown is that sometimes people come in very underdressed for an interview. I mean, really underdressed, like they just woke up, and it's almost like they didn't even give a single thought to what they were going to wear for the interview. Now, that may be the authentic you,
right?
But what you're telling me is that you really don't care enough to be concerned about that, and that actually tells me something about you that you probably don't want me to know, if that makes sense.
Absolutely.
And I also had a friend who overdressed, and it's hard to imagine, but I know that the guy applied for a very high position at an executive level inside of a major hospital network, and raised eyebrows because he showed up for the interview in a very expensive suit with French cuffs with cufflinks, which gentlemen generally don't wear anymore these days. We've kind of achieved a kind of a state of casualness that's French cuffs anyway say something and not necessarily what you want to say.
Right.
They actually brought it up. They said, we really think we'd like to hire you here, but the French cuffs, they actually made a point of talking about that and saying, most people around here don't dress like that.
And so what did the person say?
He said, well, I'm sorry, but I've got like a closet full of French cuff shirts and nice suits, and I'm planning to wear them. And he did. I mean, that was an aspect of his brand, his personal brand, that he just wasn't going to step away from. His prior job was a major stock exchange in New York City. And
I figured that, yes.
That's how you dress if you're in finance. But this job was an HR vice president's job, and that's more kind of a people-oriented position. And they were a little concerned that he might be a little bit too formal for the job.
That really does say a lot, how you dress and whether or not you decide that you're going to fit in, so to speak, with how everyone else is dressed. And I have to be honest with you, in my corporate career, I never really fit in terms of dressing the way everyone else was dressing, because I was always dressed up and I always felt like I wanted to be the best version of me. And I remember I was told by one of my executives that they were going to assign me this particular client, and that the concern was that I might intimidate them because of the way that I was dressed. Wow. And my response was, listen, if you want me to put on a haysack, I'll put on a haysack. I'll dress any way you want me to dress. I said, but right. I'm going to be me. And they'll see, regardless of how I'm dressed, that there's a real person in here. And I'm very down to earth, regardless of how I look.
And that real person, I mean, you never get a second chance to make a first impression. People say that all the time. So you don't want to be either overwhelming or underwhelming, I think, in the way you appear. But that's not just true in the interview. That's true every day. I mean, you don't, what you want is for you to be unfiltered. So you want people to get to know Dr. Jacalyn Kerbeck. And you don't want them distracted by anything, either by dressing down or dressing too high up. You want all those distractions kind of tuned out. And I think that's kind of the key to authenticity. And it's hard to coach people to relax. I remember somebody said, never in the history of calming down has anybody ever calmed down when somebody said, calm down. But how do you get somebody who's really nervous and really kind of like on edge about an interview? How do you get them to find their center and settle into it and make that a relaxing kind of a thing?
Well, that's a great question. I do find when I'm doing life coaching that people seem very uptight in the initial few minutes, and I'll ask them about it and they'll say, they're nervous. And so even for me before this show, I had a lot of anxiety because I'm pumped up and excited, right? So
I saw that. We see each other before the show, and yes, you were pumped up and excited. I can speak to that.
So what I usually tell people, it's the same thing that I follow myself, is that I do very deep breathing in and out through my nose, and then I just calm everything down. So when you start to breathe, really use deep breathing, then your whole body changes, your mind opens up, your heart opens up, and you are no longer fixated on whatever it is that was making you filled with anxiety. But it is a practice that you have to do over and over and over again.
Yeah. Now that you brought it up, I have this kind of type A personality that I've been cursed with my whole life.
Come on now.
Just a little. And frequently I find myself in situations where if I could just sort of settle down a little bit, it would work a lot better for me than my usual approach, which is kind of like a cross between a steamroller and a jackhammer. And people have suggested, why don't you take a meditation course, or why don't you take yoga? And I know you do yoga training.
I do yoga training, and I actually am starting on Monday taking meditation teacher certification through The Path, which is a company out of New York. So I'm really looking forward to that. So are you saying that you do practice yoga and meditation?
I've never had any faith in it, frankly. And I mean, that sounds heretical to you, and I know you do it. So what do you say to somebody like me who believes that that's just a bunch of malarkey, to use a common phrase?
Well, I think you're going to have to sign up for a life coaching session, Al, for that one.
I guess I am. And you're going to put the link up so I can go online and do that, right?
There's a lot behind that one for sure.
But you can. But the truth is you do get great results when you practice, step outside of what you normally do, and practice some of these exercises. I think that makes a huge difference in how you approach the world. It's got to help before you go out on an interview.
Absolutely. You want to be at your absolute best when you're going for an interview, because especially now there are so many people who are fighting for the same jobs, and you want to make yourself set an example that you are a step above, or that you have this skill set or this education, this experience, and that's why they should hire you. So we're going to chat more about that, but we are going to go to our first commercial break. So stay with us on Rapping with Dr. Jacalyn. We will be right back after the break.
I'm so excited.
Hey everybody, my name is Ralph Graves Jr. I'm the host of the Ralph Graves Jr. Show, and I want to invite you to pick up my book, Unstoppable. I wrote a book called Unstoppable. It's 7 universal laws that will transform how you pursue and achieve success. The one thing that my 20 years of law enforcement has taught me is that no matter who you are, we are all governed by universal laws, like gravity. But in this book, we're going to talk about laws like the law of forgiveness, laws like the law of control, the law of intelligent practice, the law of expectancy. I was able to see how those, no matter what their background was, those who identified and treated these laws with respect, they were able to go on and lead successful lives. So pick up this book, and you can go ahead and pick it up at Amazon.com, BarnesandNoble.com, RalphGravesJr.com, where anywhere where fine books are sold. Thank you.
There are 7.7 billion people on Earth today. 40% of these people are under the age of 25. Young adults are the most fertile mission field in the world today. In Scripture, we see Jesus pouring his life into 12 young adults who he equipped to change the world and all of history. Like Jesus, we believe that the best approach to reach the world with the gospel is to invest in young, emerging leaders and equip them to build disciple-making movements. Concentric is the notion of surrounding and sharing a common center. Our center is the model and strategy of Jesus for both leadership development and ministry formation. As a global alliance, we provide equipping in biblical leadership based on Jesus' example in the New Testament. Jesus modeled for us how to make disciples that reproduce. Focusing on leadership development is key to creating movements that spread the gospel and Jesus' disciple-making strategy to young leaders around the globe. Our Ministry Alliance partners are actively equipping leaders and building movements of multiplication that reproduce the life of Christ. Join us today to equip young leaders with Jesus' strategy that will change cities and nations.
The session that we had with BCAT was really entertaining and enlightening. We were able to put together some very specific steps that we as individuals can take, and it was really fun to all come together and see sort of where we're going as a team and how we can all get there together.
We had a tremendous experience with the BCAT partners. One of the challenges that we have as an organization is to make sure that we have the right people in the right chairs doing the right thing. To do that well, you have to have synergy. You can try to dream up ways to make sure that your group does that, or you can rely on experts. We would recommend BCAT partners to anybody who's looking to take their organization to the next level.
Academy Sedan and Limo is a full-service transportation company serving the Philadelphia metropolitan area with full knowledge of the New York City, Baltimore, and Washington, D.C. areas. We pride ourselves on being the most dependable, conscientious company in the industry. Our always on-time service and dependable pricing make us the company to call for any event or occasion. Our vehicles can accommodate any size party for any occasion. Our vehicles range from four-door sedans to SUVs to minivans to limo buses to full-size tour buses and can accommodate groups of 2 to 100. We offer airport shuttle service or over-the-road service without limitation regarding mileage or time, and no drive is too long or too far. So if you find yourself in need of transportation of any type with any vehicle, give us a call at 610-842-4564 and let us show you what a real transportation company can do for you.
Use code ACADEMY2020 to receive 20% off your first 3 rides, including parking and tolls.
Ladies and gentlemen, here it is, the most listened to radio show on the planet. Even the other stations are tuned in too.
You're listening to Business Talk Radio, where we take business to the next level.
Well, here we are. We made it back from the commercial.
We did. When you get through the first commercial, you've got it knocked. After that, it's easy.
I didn't disconnect us from the broadcast. So we were talking about the first interview. What happens in your experience when someone makes it past the first interview and maybe they're at the final interview and they're up against one or two other really strong people?
Well, one of the reasons why I'm so thrilled that we have a guest like Matt Warzel on the program today, and we'll be bringing him into the program in about 10 minutes, is that it really is a gauntlet process. When you consider all the interviews that you have to go through to actually earn a job inside of a company, starting with a resume and then having to meet maybe 2 or 3 or 4 different sets of, in some cases, panel interviews, getting through all that, surviving all that is a challenge, and it requires a lot of flexibility, a lot of, you have to be somewhat quick on your feet. Again, you can't pretend to be something you're not, but you've got to be able to, I think it's important to remember that the people that are interviewing you in each interview are human beings too, and that human beings like to be connected with as human beings. So where you can start a conversation with just one person of the people that are interviewing you and maybe just talk directly to them. And don't be afraid to ask them questions, because they've got things they want to share with you too. It's really a conversation. And I think the more genuine that conversation is, the higher your chances are of making it through to the end, because ultimately people want to hire people that they know, that they like, and that they trust. So
Absolutely.
Yes, you've got to check off all those boxes, and you've got to have the skills that they need, but you've also got to convince people that that you are going to be the positive force they want you to be, and not the negative force that many employees turn out to be.
For sure. And I also like to do research. I'm fortunate that I haven't had that many jobs in my career. I've stayed at places for a long time, but I remember for the corporate job that I had for the last 13 years, I had also interviewed with 2 other companies at the same time, and all 3 of them wanted to bring me back for the final interview. And I thought, oh, this is really great. I'll just roll the dice and see what happens. And I thought that's not really a very good strategy. It would make a lot more sense to do my research about the company. And why don't I reach out to people who work there and just ask them, what is your experience like? Would you be willing to talk to me about what it's really like to work at XYZ? And what ended up happening was that I went with my instinct, and I went to the final interview for the company where I was just working for the last 13 years. And I got the job. And I think it was because I was not only prepared, but I was really passionate about it, because I did my research. I wasn't just showing up for a job interview to see if I could get it and then, check off that box.
I think that's a big qualifier. When you show that you're interested in their work, even before you work there, that you really want to know more about what it is they do and where ultimately you're going to fit in. I think those are powerful ways to connect with people who have to make this decision that affects the rest of your life. So that homework, I think, helps. We also live in a weird world, and I'm anxious to ask Matt what he thinks about this. There is this thing now called Glassdoor. Jacalyn, I think you probably...
Sure.
So I can know going in what the other employees of a company think about that company.
Right.
And that leaves you open. I mean, in an interview, is it a good idea to bring up, you got this really crappy Glassdoor review? What do you guys have to say about that? I wonder if that's a great strategy for getting a job in a company.
Well, I can share with you that in my sales career, I was calling on this organization, and I was calling in at the CEO level, and the person seemed to be interested, but I couldn't nail down the meeting. So I did my research on Glassdoor, and I saw there were some disgruntled employees. And then I also found some consumer reviews that were not too great. So I thought it was really, why don't I shake things up, and why don't I let them know that this is what's really going on in the public space? Are you aware of this? And sadly, it didn't work out.
I would say, and unsurprisingly, there are, ultimately, you got to remember what you're trying to accomplish in this process.
Right.
That is to get a job. So, you can't all of a sudden shift to become the Megyn Kelly of the interview set where you're grilling the people that are trying to decide whether to hire you or not. I mean, the last thing they want to feel like is that they're being cross-examined in a courtroom. And so it's probably best if you see something on Glassdoor that suggests you shouldn't work there, then don't. But don't go in there with guns a-blazing trying to fix the place so that it's okay for you to work there, because you're just not going to be able to do that.
Now, what about this perspective? What if for the majority of it, the most of the people who put reviews on Glassdoor are disgruntled? What if they have 5,000 employees and they've got 15 bad reviews? Could it be that there's some people that weren't happy working there and it's still a great place to work?
That gets us into the weird world of social media and how much of what's on the internet can actually be trusted. But because I have the same question about Yelp reviews for restaurants, let's say, or for retail stores. Yeah, I mean, you see a couple of bad ones and no good ones, let's say.
Right.
A few people maybe seem disgruntled, but nobody has anything good to say. I guess that actually says something to you. And if they have 5,000 employees and only 3 go on Glassdoor and say, gee, we love this place, you have to wonder who those 3 are.
Right.
So it's a little bit like a Trojan horse. You don't know what's inside. You bring it in, I guess, anyway, and maybe then it's too late. So
Al, are you someone who follows reviews? It's important to you before you make a decision about something, before you purchase something. Do you give a lot of credence to reviews?
No. For example, movies. I really loved some awful movies. I mean, I've really enjoyed some terrible films. And I mean, there are a lot of people out there who just feel like they need to express an opinion. And there are a lot of people out there who feel their opinion doesn't have any weight unless it's negative. So I really am kind of more of I want to see for myself kind of a guy. So I would probably accept that input and maybe keep it in the back of my mind, but I don't think I'd act on it. I think I'd go with the job, go with the company and what I know about it, and then make those decisions for myself after I'm there. I
agree with you. That's the same thing that I would do.
Yeah, because there's an awful lot of people out there yelping the hell. They say yelping the hell out of somebody. You get out there, find a business, and you yelp it out of business. And there are a lot of people out there that kind of wild on a company, and I think that's an unfair bias in itself. I agree. I also wanted to add something too, but we talk an awful lot about the applicant for a job, and Matt will probably have a perspective on this too. But I think a lot of companies who are in a position to hire do a really terrible job communicating expectations to an applicant. I don't think they really explain very clearly what's expected of them in the job. And I don't think they do a really good job selling the job to an applicant. I think they lose an awful lot of really good, high quality applicants who make it all the way through that interview process and then decide at the end that they want to go work for somebody else because they just weren't impressed with the interviewers and the way the interviewers sold the opportunity. So I think that's something organizations need to consider too. What you want the best, so put your best forward too to make sure that you attract the best.
I agree with you. And you know what? We are going to go to a break because we've got Matt Warzel backstage, and he is going to come out and share his perspectives and what he sees that's going on out there in the world of getting a job and changing careers and starting your own business. So stay with us. We're going to hear from some of our friends who are sponsoring us, and we'll be right back on Rapping with Dr. Jacalyn with Al Cini and Matt Warzel.
Hey everybody, my name is Ralph Graves Jr. I am the author of this book called Unstoppable. Now what Unstoppable is about is it's 7 universal laws that will transform how you pursue and achieve success. Why don't you pick up your copy today? Go to my website, www.ralphgravesjr.com. Go to Amazon. This book is sold wherever fine books are sold, anywhere in the country. My name is Ralph Graves. Let's be unstoppable together.
RVN TV is a platform for people of any industry to share their story. Over 285,000 viewers are tuning in to RVN TV shows monthly. We guarantee a great experience that you'll be sharing with everyone you know while increasing your personal and company's brand awareness. But what is your brand? According to Forbes, it's a combination of your logo, your product, your design and feel, and your personality. Did you know that aside from being a guest, we offer even more opportunity to boost your brand? Adding your company logo and website on screen during your interview will allow viewers to recognize your brand instantly. Incorporating images and video clips is another great way to showcase your product during your live segment. Let viewers see how good you really are. And most importantly, there's you and your interview. For less than the cost of a newspaper, direct mail, or a magazine ad, you can leave our studio and within 48 hours have a permanent digital copy of your live segment to link to your social media, embed into your company website, or use in email marketing. Investing in your brand is so very important, and we can't wait to have you as a guest.
Make a bold statement by wearing a custom jewelry design from Margie Cedrone, Artisan Jeweler, located at 121 Haddon Avenue in Westmont, New Jersey. Telephone number 215-384-7155. Margie Cedrone is an artisan jeweler who has been a permanent fixture on the renowned Jewelers Row in Center City, Philadelphia since 1988. Starting her business in 1982, all of Margie's designs are individually handmade as well as custom design. She's one of the only jewelers left in the area who still crafts the finest tailor-made diamond jewelry, whether it's a statement piece or an everyday item. In addition to her one-of-a-kind designs, she specializes in pearl stringing and bead jewelry repairs. Margie Cedrone Jewelry pairs nearly 30 years of experience with the building of lifelong client relationships. Dr. Jacalyn has been a client and friend of Margie Cedrone for many, many years. Each week during my show, Rapping with Dr. Jacalyn, live on Business Talk Radio, I will be featuring one of the beautiful pieces of jewelry that Margie custom made for me. I urge you to contact Margie through her website, margiecedronejewelry.com. Wait no longer to make your own bold statement.
Ladies and gentlemen, here it is, the most listened to radio show on the planet. Even the other stations are tuned in too.
You're listening to Business Talk Radio, where we take business to the next level.
Today's show is sponsored by Dr. Jacalyn. Take charge of your life personally, financially, and professionally. Visit drjacalyn.com to book an appointment today.
Well, we're back. You guys switch places. Hello. Welcome to this show, Matt. It's great to see you.
Good to see you guys, too. I have a little hair gel in, and clearly
you're fixing your hair. It looks good.
I couldn't see myself in the bottom screen, so I was like, well, we'll see how it looks.
It's exactly the hairstyle we hire for around here.
It's dark backstage. So welcome from North Carolina. It's great to have you. And you probably heard our discussion about what it's like out there in the workforce, but you are an expert. So you are the founder of MJW Careers. You are also a certified professional resume writer. You are an actor, a director, and a producer of your own full-length feature film. And you have your own, and I hope I say this right, IMBD.
Yeah, correct. That's kind of a film tracking database. So once you, well, I should say in the 2000s, it was a lot more glorified because it was like really hard to get on it then. Now pretty much anybody can get on there. So I don't tout it as much.
Well, listen, Al and I aren't on there that I know. Are you on there, Al?
My cat's on there.
Okay.
You guys can just use this. Throw Rapping with Dr. Jacalyn up as a show. Trust me. We're
getting on, man.
Yeah, you can get your own going. Don't worry.
Great. So, Matt, what's it been like for you during this pandemic with people reaching out? What are you hearing in terms of people wanting direction either for the career that they're in or to change careers?
It's usually the latter right now. I mean, clearly, well, in fact, today I had a handful of consults, and a couple were people who kind of saw the writing on the wall. So I think there's a lot of people that foresee something happening or are flat out just trying something new, because right now is a good time to evaluate, make some internal assessments, and see if something out there comes to fruition that might give them more, pride of what they're doing and a passion for what they're doing, and just don't want to hit snooze on the alarm all day. So, I think I'm not seeing as many as people saying, hey, I hate my job during a pandemic, I'm going to jump ship. I mean, there are a handful of those too, but a lot of people, I think, hey, I might just irk this out a little longer, just because it's beneficial to have a job right now during uncertain times, and it's a blessing, quite frankly. So usually that would have been the case in 2019. You would have had most of my clients are just people sick and tired, and they're getting out of there. But right now I'm seeing career changers more than I have in a while.
Wow. So Matt, if somebody's looking to change careers, they start with a draft of a resume. They send that resume to you and you punch it up?
So essentially they'll give me what they have. And I'm not one to just do edits to resumes. I stopped doing that years ago because all it does is mix messaging. You have half of the writing is one person's style, and then mine comes into play, and it just doesn't work. So now it's a full-blown revamp. But I want that initial draft just so I can kind of get a succession plan, kind of see where they've been and what they're doing. And then I'll have them answer a series of questions. I'm a believer of the questionnaire up front before I talk to them. Otherwise, it's just a sales call. So once I get that questionnaire, there's about 15 questions, match that to the draft, and then I say, okay, here's the picture we're trying to paint. And at that point, reestablish a communication line of, let's clear some things up. Let's try to figure out what I need. So then once I'm actually done and feel confident to start development in terms of messaging, enough accomplishments and the right buzzwords, then I'll kind of start filling in the gaps with my expertise to kind of formulate this piece of paper that, can dictate thousands of dollars on the back end.
Well, so if it were me and I put a resume together and I sent it and I didn't send it to you, what are the typical mistakes that guys like me make that guys like you can prevent?
That could be a long list, Al, considering you.
Well, and it's funny because I actually have a pet peeve list in a blog article back in, I think, 2017 even. I'm looking at it now. When you said that, I've had this question come up. And, I mean, I've got 20 just on here alone. But first and foremost is spelling, because as I continue to engage with decision makers that are on the hiring end or recruiters or whatever, with my own membership in my own resume writing world, everyone still starts off with that, which I think is funny, because you would assume, hey, come on now. We're all, have Grammarly and MS Word stuff. So, but no, it's still a deal breaker. And it's amazing to me that there is absolutely no slips. And it's the same as anything, where it's not like this resume is something that you got to grind at every day. You should continue to add to it, whether it's a skill set or an accomplishment or something really cool. But it shouldn't be something that you should mull over every day. Just get it done right, and you don't have to worry about the spelling. And then the other one, though, I'll just throw out because it kind of piggybacks on that, is capitalizing. It's not going to probably break the deal for getting a job if you're the right person. But for me, as being a kind of someone who's trying to be stringent to the rules, and I know my fellow resume writing friends, we all agree that if you try to just capitalize everything or bold stuff, I mean, I've seen the bolding worked sometimes, but it's just distracting. It's like, just let the words speak to themselves, and don't capitalize words because you think they matter. Capitalize them because they're supposed to be, because that's the detail that hiring managers want to see.
No, that's so if I'm lying on my resume and saying that I'm a Rhodes Scholar, I don't want to spell it ROADS.
Yeah, absolutely. And I would think you would if you got that credential.
Well, we were talking about this before you came on too, about some of the dumb things that I've done. And I was a recruiter for a long time, and I remember people used to like to list their hobbies that they like to do outside of work. How personal are you allowed to get in a resume before you've kind of crossed the line?
The hobbies thing is one of those divides that I think in our industry, same as should the LinkedIn match the resume, and there's does a cover letter matter? There's a lot of these divides, straight 50-50. I'm a believer of get rid of the hobbies, because I want more of that white space towards achievements and value offerings and relevant stuff towards that role. Because as much as like, it'd be cool to say, you're, in the water polo, it might strike a chord with some hiring managers, maybe like the 1 out of the 50 that loves water polo too. But like, is that going to be the thing that gets you an interview room? It might not deter you from getting an interview room, but you can use that one line for another line of saying, look, I captured $300,000 in savings, or whatever the impactful stuff is. Because like you said earlier, or Sal's prior webcam, sorry, as someone said in a prior webcast today, you're making money or you're losing money for them. And a lot of times, you want to be the one, or I should say losing or saving. So it's like, you got to make them money instead of costing them. And if you're showing that you're into horseback riding and stuff like that, cool. But people are busy. These hiring managers are doing this stuff at 4:00 on a Thursday, and they're busy with other projects. So make it easy on them and get to the point. Like I should have.
Right, makes sense.
You actually made a very good point.
Excellent. I thought I was rambling at one point.
It was good. You did good.
Oh, that was good. And Matt, you and I have talked about this. What about people who have decided to leave the workforce and start their own business? Are you getting people calling you with questions about that?
I would assume there's a lot out there. And again, I'm just a one-man band, so I can only speak to me personally. But I'm assuming there are going to be a handful of those kind of the people that are, finally going to take that leap, because and career changers are different, because you might be going for some sort of other role or within the department, or maybe just something completely different that you have a passion for, which is cool. But entrepreneurship is a completely different jump. And I've had that experience. I wouldn't say as much right now. So I would actually say I could probably count on one hand, maybe even less than that, a couple that came to me all year so far looking to go into that leap. And when they do, it excites me, because then I can open this world up of what I went through and trying to help streamline some of the, the legal stuff or the setting up of accounting or whatever, or client acquisition strategies. So that stuff gets me excited, but surprisingly, no, not as often or not as many during this pandemic as I thought. And maybe people are just because they're tightening their spending right now and they're trying not to take too big of a leap.
Could be.
Dr. Jacalyn has a crazy Facebook page, all kinds of nutty things on it. And is that going to cost her a job someday? I mean, do hiring people actually look at your Facebook page?
Oh yeah, more than the old myth of 10 years ago when it was all new and people were like, you better watch out. They're looking, and I think hiring managers back then didn't even probably realize what this stuff was, even a lot of them. But now I'm assuming hiring teams are implementing this as a part of their regular strategy. I've been out of the recruiting game for, since 2009. So, I can't speak to directly in the pit right now what they're doing, but I can guarantee that it's got to be a part of the assessment. Because, they want to make a catch-all of this candidate. So, if they're willing to spend money on personality tests and hands-on, on-site type of technical testing like they will with welders sometimes, or people with tools that they got to bring. If they're making all these efforts to do that as a pre-screening, a couple clicks I'm assuming is going to be pretty easy. So yes, I would say clean stuff up and try your best to, if you got to show party pictures, I guess do them on ones where it deletes right away, or, I can't keep up with this technology either, but
right.
Yeah. So I would say clean it up.
And by the way, I just want to state for the record that my Facebook page is not filled with a bunch of stuff, right? It's all professional.
I made that up.
Well, guys, this is a great discussion. We've got to take one more commercial. It's a short one. So stay with us. We will be right back.
RVN TV is a platform for people of any industry to share their story. Over 285,000 viewers are tuning in to RVN TV shows monthly. We guarantee a great experience that you'll be sharing with everyone you know while increasing your personal and company's brand awareness. But what is your brand? According to Forbes, it's a combination of your logo, your product, your design and feel, and your personality. Did you know that aside from being a guest, we offer even more opportunity to boost your brand? Adding your company logo and website on screen during your interview will allow viewers to recognize your brand instantly. Incorporating images and video clips is another great way to showcase your product during your live segment. Let viewers see how good you really are. And most importantly, there's you and your interview. For less than the cost of a newspaper, direct mail, or a magazine ad, you can leave our studio and within 48 hours have a permanent digital copy of your live segment to link to your social media, embed into your company website, or use in email marketing. Investing in your brand is so very important, and we can't wait to have you as a guest.
Well, we're back, and it's great to see you, Matt. I wanted to switch gears and talk about the book that you've written. We've got an image of it. I'm not sure where it's going to pop up of your face.
Right for Matt's face.
So let's talk there.
You go.
All right, this will work. I'll lean a little.
That's perfect.
So the title of your book is How to Get Unemployed, Fill That Calendar. What's this book about?
Yeah, so the unemployed I thought was just so cool back in 2009, and I don't know if I regret it now or not, but it's been a running series. It's my second book. This one, the first one was more of a catch-all knowledge dump of anything from using the internet to how to just fundamental job hunting to everything in between. So I'm kind of, this one I really want to get more strategic and really spend a lot of time. So this one essentially is a day by day, literally for those, was it 6 weeks? I can't, is it 6 weeks? I should know this. No, there's like literally day to day for 6 weeks, what you're doing. So day one, you accomplish these tasks. Day two, you accomplish these tasks. So, and this is kind of how I run my business and scheduling so that I'm maximizing my efficiency and trying to, capture as much revenue as I can while helping as many people as I can. So this was just kind of that mindset. So in terms of these job hunters, not to get overwhelmed when they're like, oh, I hear, looking for work supposed to be work and where do I start and stop? And it's like, so let's just make it easy for these people. And if you kind of just stick to it, I really think that, you'll have some things start to pop just from all the seeds you're planting. But again, it's not the perfect answer either. I mean, there's hundreds of these books, thousands of them. So take what you can get from everywhere. I always try to say that and really, apply yourself into that process. And you should start opening up more opportunities for interviews. And that's my goal, is just let's get you in the interviews.
Wow. And you can get that on Amazon, I'm assuming, Matt?
You can, yes. And if you go to my my link, jobstickers.com.
Okay, great.
And you also have created your own film, which I think is amazing. You acted in it, directed, produced it. Tell us more about that.
It's funny. I actually had a consult today with a colleague from the old LA acting days. He's like, "You're memorable. Do you remember 2008, this acting class?" And I was like, "Oh my gosh," which made me feel flattered. But it was just funny because we both talked about just, we didn't make it. And so it was just one of these things like I made my own movie. I produced it, self-financed and everything in between, including, I collected 350 props between over 3 months. And that was just me and my wife driving to people's houses to collect stuff. So it was definitely an interesting experience. And it was just more for me, well, to be quite honest, because I wanted to be a screenwriter in my former life. And for me, it was my way of getting on IMDb as a producer before I turned 40. So it's funny that IMDb used to weigh that heavily. But no, I really wanted, I was like, I got to make a feature because I had done, I don't know how many countless shorts up to that point. And I'm by no means a filmmaker from the New York Film Institute and that kind of stuff. I just winged it by researching and, watching stuff. And that was when YouTube was starting out and no one knew what it was. So I was on there just trying to, catch fire and saw the work that was going in versus the work of people that might've gotten 1 million views. And I was like, I'm doing way too much for this and didn't give up, but I just set my sights on a little bit, something bigger and kind of just started working that angle of I'm going to take one of these screenplays I write and actually make it. And it's a redneck slapstick comedy. It's rated R. So for any young ears, it's not for you. But it was fun. And it's just one of those ones, get some popcorn in a Bud Light and turn off, the phone and you're going to, and don't think, just have fun. It's not going to change your life.
And the title and where we can find it?
What's it called?
It's called Archdale, And he's kind of a brash Southerner who doesn't know how much trouble he really is in with his own personal choices. And, it's a slapstick. It's kind of like Joe Dirt meets Eastbound and Down. So it's a little bit more raunchy than Joe Dirt, but still kind of keeps it rated R.
In a world where rednecks are competing with Yankees for jobs.
Yeah.
I
used to do the voiceover stuff. That's another nut to crack. That's a hard one, but yeah, I love the voiceover. Don LaFontaine and all those old guys, man. They were the inventors of that. He invented the from the bedroom to the boardroom. Like that was his whole thing he invented. So he's like a god in the voiceover industry.
So Matt, I'm loving the fact that you are so diverse. You've accomplished so much. What can you share with us about people who have a job now and they're looking for a side gig?
That's a great question. One of my friends was reaching out to me about his wife, and she's struggling with her low-paying job, and she wants to get into virtual assistants. And I just said, make sure she's working on the new career, so to speak, at night and during the day when you have time, and start putting in the work before you just, drop ship and you're like, I'm going to just start a company. I mean, I would really try to do some research, understand what your map is going to be from A to Z, and start really kind of getting to the point where you are more consumed with the company that you're starting than your actual job. And it's almost like time to move on. But or you just quite frankly get sick of your company. I mean, I get that too. But if you're like, I'm okay with my firm, I'm doing good, I just want to do something new, start planting seeds before you start getting carried away. Because you might start that entrepreneurship route and in a month and a half just give up. I mean, that happens a lot in that kind of space, if you will. So, but yeah, I mean, you can always start with gig economist type stuff. Get on, depending on what you're doing, there's always kind of these consultant websites now and freelance sites, and start working either for free or cheap and gain experience, gain a portfolio of clients, gain testimonials, and then you can start pricing out stuff and building a company. But I mean, those first couple years, I don't see anybody getting gangbusters unless you're inventing something that's never been invented and you can just get it to market quick. But I mean, that's very rare.
Well, I have a bread and butter question for you. I mean, a lot of people find they kind of get writer's block when they know that they have to write a resume because they want to be on the job market. And then when you tell them that they need a separate, different resume for every job that they pitch, that totally freaks them out. Are there any shortcuts to manage that? You probably know a few.
Absolutely. And the kind of the godfather of resume writing, this guy, Jay Block, we were talking to him earlier today for our association. And he actually said that he does it the same way I do, which I was kind of happy to learn, is that essentially you don't have to change anything from your experience down. Experience to your education, all that stuff can stay the same because you did what you did. You can only massage the words within your experience to make them reflect a different type of, function. So just don't try to don't bring up more red flags for recruiters that might see it as you hiding something. Be honest. Here's your accomplishments and value offerings from that role, and then take the top part now, the summary, the skills, and your accomplishments, which we actually have a physical accomplishments section before your experience, which are just maybe like 5 really awesome things that relate to that new role, and then massaging the language so then it not only reflects that next target, but also if you don't have any experience for that next target, you can use words like aspiring or acquired knowledge of, or stuff that makes you seem like on the outskirts early, or you can even use the word early career, tenured business professional, early career IT professional, like make it known where you're at in your career for that second function, but really use that top part of the first page to get your messaging realigned for the targeted role number 2. Everything else can stay the same.
Okay, so if I hire you then, it's a long-term relationship. It's not just the resume. We stay in touch over a period of time throughout my job search, and you modify what I give you based on what I'm telling you I'm currently pitching.
I do offer that service. A lot of times it'll just be a quick, hey, I need 3 resumes, one for each this, and this, and we'll kind of go through of what accomplishments for each thing and stuff I need for each thing, and then I'll build them out, and then they just go with them. But if somebody's come with me as like a partner during a job search, I will offer that type of function. But a lot of times with me, I don't necessarily have a monthly fee like some coaches might or stuff like that. So it's more of like whenever you need me. And if you need to hop on a horn, it's usually, I charge a 30-minute rate. So we can kind of, and that's not for just updating the resume. That's if they need to get job hunting coaching, literally like talk through stuff. So, but yeah, majority of the time though, they're already kind of knowing what those few things they're going to try to target, and then they're just going to get it done with right away. I wouldn't see people going on a job hunt and trying to figure it out as they do. I mean, I guess you could, because if you don't know what other things you might aspire to be, but usually it's like do that soul searching up front. Don't waste people's time on the back end when you're going through interviews. And like you said earlier, the interview process is just so long and expensive that you might tick someone off that'll come back and bite you. So know what you want to do before you go out and start asking people to pay you to do it.
That's great advice.
Makes sense. I'm wondering what you think of this as a final question in an interview, because I use this several times. I have known recruiters, and this was a line that was told to me as really solid gold. And this was a long time ago. This is 13 years ago. So at the end of the interview, I would say, Matt, what red flags, if any, do you see preventing me from getting this job?
I hate that question.
I know. It's negative, right?
Yeah. And it works. I like that, though, because it gives you a chance to maybe even come up with another solution. Perhaps add maybe your rebuttal on a follow-up letter. So, I mean, just get any sort of honestly, it's like if you'd rather leave uncertain and just have high hopes the rest of the day, that's fine. But if you want to get down to brass tacks, why not? I mean, and also you got to ask a question, though. So regardless of what it is, I mean, keep them positive. If you can, if you kind of throw one in like that, fine. I should say keep them logical, but ask questions, because if you leave going, I don't have any questions, they don't like that. Literally, they want to talk about themselves. They've been in the room all day. They want to talk about them. And so get them talking about their company and how awesome it is. And maybe you can even start throwing in a little bit more small talk at the end. But don't get too personal either. Remember that if you get personal, because all of a sudden you develop the rapport, you will do things you didn't even catch that you're doing by the end, too casual, and that can nix you. So I've had that happen to me personally with Progressive, trying to get a recruiting job there back when I lived in Cleveland. I saw it firsthand. So, don't get too cute.
So Jacalyn, what do you think our chances are getting a couple of roles in Dale Archdale too?
Yeah, right.
Part two.
Yeah, part two.
You'll have to go through my GoFundMe page. I'll have to raise money. Who wants to be in it? $1,000 investment. You can get in it.
I would love to be in it. My dream, believe it or not, this sounds ridiculous. I always wanted to be a lounge singer.
Oh yeah. A crooner of sorts.
Exactly.
All lounges are closed during COVID, so you could have.
Yeah, that's not happening. But I do have one more question for you, and Al, I'd like to hear from you as well on this. So I was in an interview. This is way back. This is in the 90s, and it was the final interview. I was sitting across the desk from the decision maker, and the landline at the time, that's what we were using, the office desk phone, just kept ringing. It was ringing constantly. Like somebody was just calling it. It rang 30, 40 times. And I figured it was a trick. It was a distraction to see what I would do. So I didn't do anything. And I'm just wondering, what kind of things have you heard about, either of you, that prospective employers try to throw at people to knock them off?
I'll let you go first on this one.
Well, yeah, actually, you know a lot more about this than I do, Matt. But yeah, I mean, any employer that would throw a stunt like that at an applicant, there's a special place in hell for them when they die, and they're not coming back.
Yeah, I would think you shouldn't be messing with people's heads, especially pandemic. I mean, if anything, I would hope this would make employers more humane after all we've gone through.
I would hope.
Yeah, less number. Yeah.
I once heard a story about a guy who lost a job because he went to dinner or lunch with the hiring manager. And it was a group of people sitting around, and he salted his food before he tasted it. So their decision was to not hire him because they felt if he was so impulsive that he would put salt on food before he actually tasted it first, then he wasn't the guy for them.
Wow, that's interesting.
To me, that's like, take all those people, put them in a capsule, and fire them off to Mars and leave them
I know for me, for the last 2 jobs I had in my career, we had to interview with different executives over breakfast, lunch, and dinner. And so they would actually evaluate how you would handle yourself, because we did a lot of entertaining of clients. So I don't know that goes on today or not. But Matt, I wanted to talk about this special package offering you have for anybody who is watching our program today. Can you share with us what it is they would get working with you with this package?
Sure, yes. So this is kind of my most popular package. It includes a resume, cover letter. The electronic resume is essentially a text document. So if you are forced to copy and paste during the application, it would kind of lessen the opportunity for it to jumble, so to speak, if you were using a Word or a PDF. LinkedIn, which, obviously, if you're not on LinkedIn and you're a job seeker, just get on there. I don't even care if you're in emergency management. You're like, I'm not anywhere needing anybody professional. I'm in public services, and it doesn't matter if you're anything.
No.
Yeah.
And Matt, let me just jump in there and say that one of the things that really blew me away about Matt when we first connected was he has over 700 LinkedIn recommendations. He's got over 9,000 followers. So I hear all the time from people, LinkedIn's a waste of time. I'm not going to use it. I use it. I signed up for the premium package. So I think, to your point, the fact that you have all of these recommendations is really incredible. So I'm really suggesting to any of our audience that they reach out to you for professional resume writing, for a career counseling. And if you're interested in purchasing this package, you can do so on the drjacalyn.com website. And if you didn't get a chance to really dig into what the offering is, it is there under the storefronts. So, gentlemen, we have come to the end of our program. Matt,
that was a great deal. That is a great deal.
That's really good. So Matt's contact information is streaming across. You have his email address, his phone number, which I think is so cool, 855-YES-EMPLOYEES. And then also jobstickers.com. Lots of ways to get in touch with you. Reach out to him on LinkedIn. Mr. Cini, we've got your contact information. Do you want to share any special offering you might have from BCAT?
Just, as a matter of fact, people give me a call or reach out by email. We have what we call a free CAT, which is an introductory evaluation of how aligned your people are with the purpose they serve in your company. It only takes a few hours, and it's very effective. And just call us and we'll get it started.
Outstanding. And we're asking if you would subscribe to our YouTube and Facebook pages. This way you get alerted right away that our program is going to be happening. So I want to thank everyone for being here today. I am your host and executive producer, Dr. Jacalyn Kerbeck. I ran the board today, and unfortunately nothing blew up. So
you did great.
So join us next Wednesday when we will be back with another edition of Rapping with Dr. Jacalyn, the business show. Thank you and stay well.
Ladies and gentlemen, here it is, the most listened to radio show on the planet. Even the other stations are tuned in too.
You're listening to Business Talk Radio, where we take business to the next level.